we use communication in everyday life? So the probably most obvious way that we do this is canned plans and scripts. So the first thing you need to understand is your brain is like a filing cabinet. You basically go through all these different interactions throughout your life, and you've kind of been taught through your culture, through just, past experiences, how to act within a particular communication setting or situation. Okay, so say you are walking down the hallway at Pulaski Tech, UAPTC. You're walking down the hallway, you see someone that you don't know. They walk by and it's just y'all two in a really long hallway, so you're awkward, you know that the other person knows that you're there, but whatever you look, well, you're passing each other. What do? You're going to think, okay, I probably should just be cordial, right? You'll probably say, hey, how are you? And the other person will say, good, you? Good. And you keep on going. So in that situation, that would be a canned plan and a script, meaning there's a situation that calls for your communication. So you have a specific plan for that situation, right? And that, again, remember, your brain is like a filing cabinet, meaning you have like a file for how to have just whatever that's called, just little conversation with people in passing, right? So you have a file for that. So basically that's your canned plan. Then you pull the actual file out. So this is my file for, or my document out. So that's this is my document for how to talk to people I don't know in kind of awkward situations, but that I need to acknowledge them. So I kind of have, that's pretty specific, right? But I have this document, and that's a script. So I know, okay, if they say, how are you? I say good or well or whatever. And then they say, and I say, how are you? And they say the same. And then we keep on going. That's the script. Another thing that is attached to that is communication concepts and context. Communication context is, and it is different. Let me say this. It is different than communication setting. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But communication context has to do with all of the different aspects surrounding the communication situation, right? So a communication situation is this situation that causes us to communicate. So remember our communication process, right? We're the participant. Us and that person in the hallway were participants talking to each other, right? Okay, so there's always context around a communication. So let's think back to that communication process, right? So there's two participants. We send a message through a channel. There is noise or interference. Well, surrounding all of that is going to be context. So there are several different types of context. And I believe the book lists 5. There's physical context, so that means physically what is around me, things that I need to be aware of. Like if I'm in the classroom, that's a physical context, right? We communicate differently, you and I, in the classroom versus if you come to my office and we sit down and talk one-on-one. There's just different ways that we have learned through our past experiences to communicate because of our physical context. Okay, so there's also social context, and that's going to be the nature of your relationship. So using the hallway example, you don't know that person very well. So social context, you're understanding, okay, this person doesn't know me very well, and so if they're asking me how I am, they probably don't want to know about my whole day. They probably are just saying, hey, I acknowledge that you're there, what's up, moving on, right? Also, if you think about the idea of the classroom, so a classroom, the social context around that is I'm your teacher, you're my student. How do we communicate? There's a social context that surrounds that communication. It's going to change how you communicate towards me versus how you would communicate towards a classmate. Okay? Then you have historical context. That's the background. So again, think about that person in the hallway. You have no prior communication with this person before, so there's nothing really to talk about, or there isn't anything more than just that canned plan script. Hey, how are you? Good, how are you? Then there's psychological context, and that's going to be the moods. So how do people feel in this particular situation? So if you are walking in and you are, let's say you're walking into a funeral, right? You're going to have to kind of understand, how are other people going to be acting here? You probably shouldn't walk in hey, y'all, what's up? That's not how it should go, right? Instead, unless that's maybe the culture of where you're from. But for the most part, where I've been raised, most likely you're going to walk in very reverent. That would be psychological context, paying attention to that. Cultural context. So this has to do with your... Hi, I'm doing a video.
I see you.
You see me. You want to say hi? Hi.
Hi. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll be done in just a minute. Thanks. Okay, so cultural context. Cultural context has to do with your beliefs, your values, orientations, underlying assumptions, basically, where are you from? So from the South, one of the things that you might think to do, like I remember my dad told me when I was younger, I noticed my dad would wave to people whenever he would be driving, he'd wave. And I said, do you know that person? And he said, oh no, that's just like saying, hi, how are you? So then I started doing it, and now I do it all the time. If I see anybody, I make sure to wave. Well, that's probably not how it is everywhere, right? Those things are cultural, right? Because say, like for me, growing up in this culture, I didn't know what that meant till my dad told me, till he taught me about that. That would be cultural context. So all that to say, context plays a huge role in your daily communication. What you believe is the right way to communicate, what comes off effectively, what creates shared meaning. All of those things comes from context. So that surrounds all that whole communication model and process context surrounds it. All right, so what is a setting? So communication settings are different in that they are talking about the formality, how many people. So like there are several different types of that. There's intrapersonal, and intrapersonal talks about how your communication with yourself, right? So how do you talk to yourself? I like to refer to this as self-talk, right? But just how do you talk to yourself? What are the thoughts that you're having? The next thing is interpersonal communication. So this is you and another person. So us communicating one-on-one, if you came to my office and we were having a sit-down conversation, that would be more of an interpersonal. Small groups, though, are anywhere from 3 to 20 people. After 20, you're getting more towards public speaking or mass communication. But small groups can still be social groups. It can be family, like if you go to family events where everybody comes and hangs out, like that's a small group. But it's still interpersonal in nature. But that would be, that's another communication setting. Then we have public speaking, and I believe that's what they refer to it as in here. Yes, public communication. So public communication is going to be maybe a little bit more formal. That's going to be more so you standing up, maybe talking in front of people. Which I guess I need to go back and say that, of course, intrapersonal and interpersonal are pretty informal. Small group can be formal and informal, depending on the situation. But then you have the public communication, which is going to be a little bit more formal. Then you have mass communication, and mass communication is going to be like the news, right? Like that's mass. Like you're sending out a message to a lot of people, and that's pretty formal in nature, right? So in this class, you're going to learn a lot about intrapersonal, interpersonal, small group, public speaking. We won't focus as much on mass, but it's still important to be aware of it and know what that is.